here on this Friday afternoon. Carol, a decidedly different day than what we saw yesterday. All the major indices up about 1% or so on the day.
So well said. I mean, 5 down days that we've had before this of the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, a different tone, some broad-based buying here on this Friday. So we'll see whether or not it holds as we get into a new week next week.
How's this for a superlative? Best day.
What?
Tim loves saying
2025.
Oh.
Just indulge him.
How long? Excuse me, Dad. How long do you plan to make that joke?
Well, I just made it on
I'm
radio,
just sad he got there before me, man.
I was doing like a test run on Carol earlier. She laughed.
Did it with our market guest.
Yeah. So.
And how'd that go over?
She loved it.
She chuckled.
Yeah.
You know, we should mention though that stocks reached session highs after Johnson was reelected Speaker of the House. It's a reminder of how personnel makes policy and how politics is really going to be a driving force in the markets this year.
Okay, and just to point out, thank you, Finley. Romaine was making that exact same joke yesterday. Okay, that was the worst day so far this year.
I learned from the best.
How dare you call me out like that?
I'm just saying. Let's blame Finley on that one.
I am curious, though, too. I mean, in all seriousness, we talk about this idea of whether the price action that we're seeing today, just like what we saw yesterday, is that really reflective of what we're really going to see transpire over the next few weeks or even for the rest of the year? How much can we read into this? Think about that, Tim, and see if you can come up with a joke for that.
I'm thinking.
Clapping and cheering here, and a good reason to clap and cheer here with the NASDAQ Composite leading the charge on the day with a 1.8% gain. The NASDAQ 100 up about 1.7% here as the market tries to get its mojo back after several days of declines. The S&P 500 also higher by roughly about 74 points or about 1.3%. It's still going to close below that 6,000 level, 59.42 and change. The Dow up about 300 points or 0.8%, and the Russell 2000 trying to keep pace here, a 1.6% gain here on the day, up about 37 points.
Wow, that's an interesting trade. All right, guys, and if you look at the S&P 500, most names in the index actually gaining some ground today. 394 names, Scarlet, to the upside, 109 to the downside.
All right, let's take a look at the IMAP, which shows the sector performances. Spinach pie, pesto pie, whatever you like. It's all green all around. Consumer discretionary leading the way, up 2.4%, really powered by Tesla, which ended its own 5-day slide. Infotech gaining 1.6%. REITs up by better than 1.25%. The worst performers, or I should say the laggard here, is materials. Little change on the day, and the only sector to decline in 2024, losing 1.8% in the year.
All right, as you said, a lot of green, so a lot of choices for me. Rivian Automotive up 24%, guys, finishing pretty much at its highs of the session. The company coming out, announcing some production numbers for the fourth quarter that beat the average analyst estimate. I should point out that this stock, though, heavily shorted, about 19%. So any good news, you might see a bunch of short covering, but nonetheless, definitely a standout in today's trade. Rivian. Nomura, this is something that Tim talked about, Nomura Therapeutics. This biotech, very small cap name, rallying nearly 26% at its highs today, following an 81% plunge in the Thursday trade yesterday. The company yesterday saying its depression drug failed in a late stage study. Mizuho coming out today and saying the shares were oversold. So you saw some investors coming back in, and the stock finishing the day with about a gain of about 10%. One more for you. It's a small cap application software company. I kind of went to interesting places that all have kind of high short positions right now. Cerent is, as I said, a application software company. Shares soaring as much as 150% in today's session, finishing the day with a gain of 143%. The voice AI company announced an expanded collaboration with NVIDIA to advance the capabilities of its, large language model family of applications. And so nonetheless, we saw investors moving into this one in a big way. Tim?
I also just want to point out, too, Fannie and Freddie. Remember them?
Oh, yes.
Up more than 20% here, maybe, potentially, a release from government.
Maybe, right?
All right, those are the gainers. I got the decliners. Actually kind of easy for me to find them today. I know you guys are familiar with this one on the day. U.S. Steel, ticker X, down 6.53%. You just interviewed United Steelworkers of America International President David McCall. We tuned in for that. Shares ended up falling today as a result of President Biden blocking that $14.1 billion sale of the company to Nippon Steel. It killed that high-profile deal. Shares fell earlier in the session as much as 8.4%. And then shares of alcohol producing companies, beer makers, wine companies, liquor companies falling today. This after U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said that alcoholic drinks like beer and wine should carry warnings of their links to cancer. Molson Coors down 3.6%. Alcohol does cause about 100,000 cases of cancer and 20,000 related deaths each year in the U.S., according to Dr. Murthy, far more than the 13,500 alcohol-associated annual traffic fatalities. We also saw Boston Beer fall, Constellation Brands fall, and ADRs of Diageo down as well. Finally, Carvana down 11.2%, down for a second day in a row after it was accused by prominent short seller Hindenburg Research of impropriety in that report that alleged that the company's subprime loan portfolio carries substantial risk and its growth is unsustainable. Carvana did say the allegations are nothing new and said, quote, "The arguments in that report are intentionally misleading and inaccurate and have already been made numerous times by other short sellers seeking to benefit from a decline in our stock price."
All right, guys, I'm taking a look at the bond market. It was a really whippy day. It was kind of interesting, and we ended with yields higher pretty much across the curve, up by about 4 basis points. Now, just to put in perspective, 10-year is where we were on Monday. So to your point, like it's Jonathan Krinsky of BTIG was saying, it's the velocity of the move, not necessarily the absolute level of the bond market. But, guys, I got to point out, $119 billion worth of supply coming on next week, the 3, the 10s, and the 30s. So watch that as everyone kind of returns to office.
I might buy some.
Really?
Yeah.
Buy some bonds?
Sure, why not?
The bonds?
Yeah, the bonds.
Okay.
I heard it's all the rate.
Where on the curve now?
On the shortest end of the curve, Alix Steel.
1 month.
1 month.
2 seconds, baby. 5 minutes. All right, let's get to some of the stories that definitely caught our radar. This is kind of a little bit of a somber tone. This is coming from the Wall Street Journal, guys. I feel like we've been talking or focusing a lot about kind of like the sin stock area or whatever, things that like aren't good for us. And this one kind of falls into it. Researchers identifying a focal point for the forces they suspect of driving up cancer cases in young people. And they talk about the gut. There's been so much more focus right on the gut, the health of the gut and the implications of it. But rates of gastrointestinal cancers among people under 5 are increasing across the globe.
Yeah, specifically colorectal cancer. And it's alarming doctors around the world. And the question is, what's causing it? What changes need to be made in order to prevent it from happening? And then my question is, how does the screening process change? If this is happening in younger folks, does it end up changing in coming years, government guidelines for when people are screened for these types of cancers?
Well, yeah, and also what I thought was interesting about that is sort of their range of possible explanations, right? Mm-hmm. We'll talk about this in a second too, but potential alcohol, right? You have the microplastics, many different things that we can kind of point to and understand, but no one knows a direct correlation, so it's hard to then wind up preventing that.
I mean, I know a GI doctor who deals with this stuff every day, and she and her family have stopped eating certain processed meats as a result of the rise in this type of cancer in young people. So the big question is, what is that link? And what are the changes we can make in our diets in order to prevent that stuff from happening?
Well, it dovetails really nicely with the big story that we've been covering all day today, one of the most read stories on the terminal. And Tim, you mentioned this earlier about the Surgeon General calling for these cancer warnings on alcohol. What does this do for people going to bars and pubs and all that? I mean, I guess we can order the non-alcoholic drinks.
There's a non-alcoholic bar opening in my neighborhood.
Really, in Park
It's
Slope?
so Park Slopey, but like,
that's
but
not
I've been to
that
see.
is such a Brooklyn thing.
It is
My
such a
gosh.
Brooklyn Park Slopey kind of thing. But you know what's interesting
Isn't
about
it
this?
just called
is
like a bodega?
No, like it's a whole bar. It's cute. It's fun. You can hang out. There's food. It's super cute. And then also
they make mocktails.
They make mocktails.
Okay, got it.
And they probably have, I don't know, it's not open yet, but they have like non-alcoholic beers and wines, I'm guessing. So maybe that's a thing. But here's my question, guys. What was the lag time between Surgeon General warnings on like women who are pregnant don't drink alcohol to like it actually hurting sales?
It's more in the zeitgeist. I don't know.
I just totally crushed
Yeah,
that
no. It's a good question, but I think it's more in the zeitgeist. It depends. If you believe the Europeans, there was no lag time. You just
Well,
continue
I mean,
drinking
in all
regularly.
seriousness, there's a question too. I mean, when I saw this, two things jumped out at me. Was A, that I feel like a lot of outgoing people are pushing through a lot of things that could, of course, be overturned by the next Surgeon General. But also the question, and this gets to your idea, Alex, is like, I mean, I hate to say it, but how many people are going to pay attention to those labels? And how graphic are the labels going to be? Are they going to be like the European-style labels that you see on cigarettes?
You make an interesting point.
Or is it just going to be a little, a few words at the bottom that everyone will ignore?
We spoke to our Bloomberg intelligence analyst earlier in our program out in London, who said that in South Korea it actually had the opposite effect.
People went out and did a bunch of buying, right?
And people went out and bought more alcohol. He said don't look to that for that happening everywhere.
Wait, they
He was
put warning
surprised,
labels and people went and bought more alcohol.
Yeah,
What,
he said
and, like
sales went up.
defiance of what?
Labels, but,
Okay.
but I think we're also talking like generations down, right? Like it might not affect us today, but generations down, the same way it was for cigarettes and alcohol with pregnant women, that might be the change.
Listen, I look at our studio, right? You don't drink. I drink occasionally. I mean, and it's just like, it's interesting. I think you see a trend more generally, right? Of people maybe pulling back or different generations.
We
Him
have
going to that mocktail
wait,
bar.
first, did Carol say she drinks occasionally? Don't you guys have like a
We do have a-
cocktail guest like every week on that show?
we do have a guest today.
Today it's
Libby Wines.
Of course.
Libby
See?
today.
I'm not just making this up.
Non-alcohol.
Oh, it's non-alcohol.
Wine and
Okay,
sparkling.
all right. There you go.
It's like you knew this story was
Happening
for
in a few
us.
I might bring my own wine bottle into the studio. I'm
Right.
just going to put it out there. All right,
I
guys.
did that once. I ordered a mocktail at a restaurant, and I was like, I think this would be a lot better with this little rye whiskey in it. And so I ordered a shot and put it in
Did you
there.
have a
It was
flask?
great.
Did you
It
do
was
it in full
delicious.
view of everyone?
Guys,
Yes, I did. And I told
All
the
right.
waiter, I said, this would be great on the menu. You're welcome.
All right, this does not
TM.
surprise me. All right, have a good and safe weekend. Alcohol or no alcohol, make your
There'll
choice.
be alcohol.
All right, our cross-platform, radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals. Be well, guys. We'll see you again on Monday, same time, same place.